There. Well, let's take you straight to Tbilisi. We can show you some images, in fact, that are coming into us live now as people have begun once again to demonstrate there in the centre of the city. You can see in the close to us the demonstrators there, one of them waving an EU flag, as you can see, and it looks like hundreds of police a little bit further back. Well, our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons, is with me here on set. We'll keep showing you some of those images as we talk. Rob, can you explain to us then what this bill's about and why so many Georgians, as we can see from these latest pictures, I mean, bearing in mind this is, of course, the morning there in Georgia, are so strongly opposed to it?
Yeah, I mean, there are some interesting things which you can take from those pictures. First of all, the size of the police presence. Also, despite the fact that it's raining heavily and has been raining for the last few days in Georgia, the turnout has been huge, with 150,000 at the weekend. And also, if you look around, a number of the people in that crowd are wearing helmets as well, which tells you a little bit about just how violent some of the clashes with the police have been. The bill is simply, it's being regarded as a repeat of the Russian Foreign Agents Bill. It's not exactly the same, but there are lots of similarities. They don't use that phrasing, foreign agents. What it's called is, it refers to organizations serving the interests of a foreign power. Now, anybody can be categorized as one of those if they get more than 20% of their funding from abroad. And that allows the government to stigmatize any NGO or any independent media organization, and allows them to take action against those organizations. That, I think, is the essential reason. And the feeling, too, among Georgians that this is targeted primarily against funding from the EU and the United States, because there isn't much other funding. Russia, for instance, doesn't provide much funding to NGOs or to independent media organizations. It's quite clear what the Georgian Dream had in mind by this. It's also frustrating, I think, for Georgians because, the EU is an immensely popular organisation in Georgia. Over 80% of the population say they want Georgia to become part of the European Union. And in December, the European Union granted Georgia candidate membership status. So, in other words, Georgians suddenly felt that the possibility of membership, which had seemed sort of like a dream before, is tantalizingly close. And the Georgian Dream chooses this moment to slam the door shut on possible membership, because the EU has made absolutely categorically clear that membership of the European Union and this law that's just about to be passed through are incompatible.
I mean, it's to people who don't understand Georgian politics, well, myself included potentially here, it is confusing, isn't it? Because on the one hand, you look at all these people and you think, well, they are the ones that have elected these lawmakers. They've elected the Georgian Dream Party. So why is the Georgian Dream Party doing this? Why are they so intent on passing the legislation?
Well, the last election was a few years ago now, so a lot has changed in the intervening period. But the other thing I think that you need to bear in mind is, first of all, Georgian politics is extremely fractured. The opposition is really divided, and that has allowed Georgian Dream to dominate Georgian politics over the last 10 years or so. The other thing, though, that you need to bear in mind here is that Georgian Dream has persistently proclaimed itself as a pro-European party. It has paid lip service, in other words, to the idea of European Union membership. The mask sort of came off on the 29th of April when Bidzina Ivanishvili, who's the honorary chairman of the Georgian Dream Party, effectively the man who controls it, he's Georgia's richest man, 7 billion euros, over 25% of Georgian GDP. He dominates Georgian politics in a way that cannot be exaggerated. He said in his speech, I think we have the words which we can bring up, the complete truth, he said, is that the non-transparent funding of NGOs is the main tool by which you can appoint the authorities of Georgia from within. In other words, this is not so much about transparency, as the Georgian Dream has been saying, but the perceived threat that NGOs seem to pose in the belief of the Georgian Dream Party to the domination of the party itself. That seems to be what it's really about. But there's another thing here. What is it precisely? Who is it precisely who is motivating the Georgian Dream? Or do they have their own ideas? There is a suggestion with some justification that the Georgian Dream Party is becoming closer and closer to Russia, that Russia is effectively pulling the strings. Possibly. It's certainly possible. It's interesting in that long speech that Bidzina Ivanishvili meant, he never mentioned once Russia, despite the fact that Russia occupies 20% of Georgian territory. A little strange, but it is also possible that Bidzina Ivanishvili and his Georgian Dream Party have a different perception of what the European Union should be. He said in the end of his speech, I will get Georgia into the European Union by 2030. I suspect that the European Union that they see is a completely different European Union, one which will be dominated by the Viktor Orbáns of the European Union rather than what we see today. The party has very close ties with Viktor Orbán's party and with the right in Europe. I think it's quite plausible that they see the European Union turning into a far more populist, nationalist organisation in the future, and that's where they want to align themselves.
Okay, interesting to see. Assuming this does become law then today, Rob, what can we expect next? I mean, there are elections in October, aren't there? But a lot can happen before that, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, a lot could happen. It could be that the European Union and others would impose heavy sanctions on Ivanishvili, for instance, and other members of the Georgian Dream Party. It may lead to negotiations and a softening of the position of the Georgian Dream and of this legislation. I doubt it somehow. I think that they've backed themselves into a corner and now find themselves in a position where society is very deeply divided. Ivanishvili, I think, had made a miscalculation. He said in that speech that I've been referring to that he introduced this legislation at this time because the elections in Georgia are not till October. He said that I chose it in this moment because by then the opposition will have exhausted themselves opposing this bill and will have no energy left to oppose us when it comes to the elections. I think that's a miscalculation. It's likely that over the summer, if anything, the divisions will grow deeper, that the opposition will grow stronger, that there could be cracks even within the Georgian Dream itself, because there are many in the Georgian Dream who are genuinely pro-European and may increasingly feel less inclined to support Bidzina Ivanishvili's view of the future. But the possibility is clear there that there could be more violence in Georgia. So we've already seen very violent repression of the opposition during the last couple of weeks or so, with attacks on party leaders outside their homes, attacks on family members of party leaders, including women and including the elderly, which has horrified Georgian society. I think that could backfire against them as well. But the big questions will be, I think, how the institutions in Georgian society line up. The police seem rock solid at the moment behind the government. We could see a repeat of what happened in Belarus, or we could see a repeat of what happened in Ukraine. I think probably neither are going to happen. I don't think either are quite the Georgian scenario, but I think that there is clearly a serious risk of violence this summer in Georgia.
Ron, great to get your analysis. Rob Parsons, our Chief Foreign Editor here on France 24. Of course, we'll continue to follow that story during the day to see whether that bill is passed or not and give you more reaction to it here on France 24.